So as I was sitting in shul listening to Kriya Satorah, I was trying to think about if I could come up with why, let's say, Parshas Vayeshev or just the whole story of Yosef is being read around Hanukkah. Because we know that when something is read around any holiday, there has to be some sort of connection. Now, I do have a sefer that does make the connection between the two, but it's about 20 pages of buildup till you get to the connection. So I'm trying to think, is there something lefi pshat, a simple explanation to connect the idea of the story of Yosef to Hanukkah? And this is what I came up with. So in this in Parshas Vayeshev, we know that Yosef Hatzadik is sold, and he's first given to a caravan of Ishmaelim. Pasuk says, "Vayeshvu la'achal lechem v'yisau einechem v'yiru v'hine orchas Yishmaelim ba'a migilad ugam aleichem nisiim nechos v'sari v'lot v'holchin lehorid mitzrayma." They sat down to eat bread. They raised their eyes and saw, and behold, the Ishmaelite caravan was coming from Gilad. Their camels were carrying spices, balsam, lotus, and bringing them down to Egypt. Now, look at Rashi, which is over here. The Gamallechem Nisim. Lama pirsem hakasuv es masa. Meaning, Rashi is bothered by why do we need to know what the Ishmaelim were carrying? Just say a caravan of Ishmaelim were coming from Gilad and they were going down to Egypt. You don't need to say that they were carrying spices of balsam and lotus. Why do you have to specify what they're carrying? It's not intrinsic to the story at all. To which Rashi says, "Lahodia matan scharan shel tzadikim," to teach you the great reward of the tzadikim. She'ein darchan shel arvim laseis ela neft ve'itran sherechen ra ulezeh nizdamnu basamim shelo yizok mireach ra. So, to teach you the reward, Rashi says, of the tzaddikim. Because we know Arabs, they don't normally carry like spices and balsam and lotus, things that smell good. They carry things like tar and, corresponding to kind of today, like oil products, right? Which have a certain type of smell. They don't usually smell good, meaning like the products that they carry. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged it that Yosef, when he would be taken down to Mitzrayim, would be taken down with like good smelling stuff. Okay, I mean, it kind of just sounds like kind of trivial, right? I mean, Yosef's being sold into slavery, and Hashem makes it that it smells good while he's being sold into slavery. That's what seemingly Rashi's saying. But what does that mean? Why would he care about that? What kind of consolation is that? So the way I heard it one time explained was that you have to understand that Yosef at this point is at the lowest point of his entire life, perhaps. His own brothers have betrayed him and are selling him away. You might think that he might give up hope. Somebody in this situation might give up hope. So what happens? So when he's being sold, he's realizing this strange phenomenon, meaning that this is not normally what Arabs carry. And so he immediately perceives the Yad Hashem because of that. That's a way for him to perceive the Yad Hashem, and that it smells good, and smell is like a wake-up type of idea, okay? It's kind of like a Kadosh Baruch Hu giving him a kiss, so to speak, meaning you do have to suffer right now. That's part of the Gezerah. But I want you to know that I still love you. Because that is how a father disciplines his son. Meaning that if it's his son, he might be yelling at him, but there is a little bit of rachmanos. Maybe there's a little pat on the head at the end of all the musar or something like that. That is the way of a father, meaning that you have to go down, you have to suffer, but here's a little kiss, so to speak, meaning to keep you going and don't forget that I love you. Meaning those good smells and spices perhaps were the thing that kept Yosef from giving up completely. It was a little like Hashem still loves you and you will get through this. It's going to take time and you will suffer. But don't forget that I'm always watching you, as being proven by like that the spices and the smell. And he would have noticed this but like from the implications that we mentioned. So now let's go to Hanukkah. So we're usually taught the Hallmark version of the Hanukkah story. But I've heard the story taught to me by Rabbi Breitowitz Shlita of Or Sameach, who gives a lot more historical context. I've read Svarim on it. And yes, a lot of the particulars are true. But there's like, for example, a whole sefer called Sefer HaMaccabees, which is like an apocrypha sefer that details all the battles. I mean, this was a very long war. There was a struggle of, in a way, I mean, it wasn't necessarily always full-time fighting during this period, but it could have been about 40, 50 years or something like that of there being turmoil. So now the Hanukkah story happens after at least a year or two, or if not more, of combat. And we have to keep in mind, maybe only 10% of the nation, so to speak, was actively engaged in this war, while the other part was either completely against the other 10% or just apathetic. So what happens? In the middle of the war, at the time, the Jewish people win a battle that gives them control of the Temple Mount. And we know the whole story that they get control of the Temple Mount. They try to clean the Mizbeach, and they light the candles and the Pach HaShemen and all that stuff, right? Now, you have to think about it like this. The Seder Doros records that after they lit the menorah and the miracle happened, they still fought for another 6 years. Meaning, think about what you were taught in Hebrew school. You were probably taught in Hebrew school that immediately after the whole miracle of the lighting of the menorah, the war was over and everything was kumbaya, right? No. Minimum, they had another 6 years of fighting left. Some say 20 years, some say 30 years. This was like towards the beginning, if like the middle of the war. And by no means was the war over. So you have to think about it like this. Imagine you were there at that time and you were not one of the 10%. You were in the 90%. You might have been kind of cynical. Okay, great. It is, I'll admit that it is pretty cool that they were able to take back the base of Migdash. How long are they going to hold it for, though? How long? Imagine the day they take back the base of Migdash, you hear that they've taken it back, and what are you thinking? You're like, great, that's cool. I'm not going to lie, that's cool. But, they're going to lose it in a week. The Greeks will send reinforcements, and there's going to be years more of war and struggle. But then you hear about the miracle of the Pach Hashem. Okay? That is HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us a kiss, so to speak, and saying that I am still here with you. Because think about all the dead bodies and all of the sorrows and the starvation that were going on at that time. And think about all the war they had ahead of them. So what did the Pach Hashem do? It was an inspiration for the Jewish people to say, you know what? Look, Hashem is still with us. Just keep going. It might take 20, it might take 6, it might take 30 years, but we will win. We will come out on top. So it's mamish the same thing as what happened by Yosef. I mean, when they had the Pach Hashem and miracle happen, a lot of the cynics, it was enough for them to say, all right, you know what? It's going to be hard. We are going to lose people, but let's keep going. And that's exactly what Yosef Hatzadik did. Yosef Hatzadik never gave up hope. And it could be because of Hashem sending him at his lowest point, the miracle of the spices. So we just have to look for our messages and realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly sending us, even in our darkest moments, messages and signs to say, I'm with you, just keep going. It might be long and it might be hard, but just keep going.